Did you ever stop and wonder if you could be related to everyone with your last name?
Just think if you're a Lincoln, how you'd be congratulated if Honest Abe were someone you could claim.
To clear up any mystery, just check your family history.
Genealogy's the name of the game. Now some ancestors you'll find you want to hide,
but most of them will fill your heart with pride.
Oh, your family tree, your family tree. Check your genealogy, find who was who and how who came to be. On your family, 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 family tree.
Welcome to the Genealogy Radio Show, the radio show that's keeping you in the loop. Today we bring to you another interesting show on a county of Ireland. Today we are focusing on County Tipperary, or the Premier County as it is also called. Today's guest on the show is Maeve, and I'd like to give her a very warm welcome. Firstly, Maeve, can you tell me about the establishment of Tipperary as a county and its growth?
Of course. Tipperary is known affectionately in Ireland as the Premier County. It covers over 4,305 kilometres in the province of Munster and comprises of 199 parishes. In addition, it has 3,159 townlands and is bordered by Limerick, Cork and Washford. Tipperary is the 6th largest county in Ireland and the 12th largest by population size alone. County Tipperary, known as County Tipperary in Irish, has 3 main towns that make up its population, of Nina, Clonmel and Thurles. When Tipperary was first established, it was made up of 12 baronies, consisting of Clan William, Elogarashi, Egerin, Kilmanock, Lower and Upper, Middle Third, Ormond, Upper and Lower, Oni, Ara and Slievda. The name Tipperary derived from the Irish words Tiberd Ara, a spring that was located in the territory of Ara. The well that provided usage to the spring was located in Tipperary, and therefore the name was created. Prior to the Normans invading Ireland in the 12th century, Tipperary, along with the rest of Munster, was divided by the old North and South kingdoms of Thomond and Desmond. These kingdoms were primarily dominated by the O'Briens and the MacCarthys, respectively. However, many battles were fought between the two families in County Tipperary. When the counties in Ireland were still separated into petty kingdoms, the town of Cashel was the seat of power for Munster. During that time, the subordinate kings of those kingdoms were called Rí, and the Ard Rí was the supreme leader, the High King of that land. It was Cashel that St. Patrick turned his attention to during his mission to save the people of Ireland from paganism. There in Cashel, a constitution was drawn up and the county of Tipperary was divided into districts at the power of the chieftains until the English rule arrived. Eventually, the provincial kings began challenging the interpretation of the constitution, and the role of High King was then determined by ambition for the role. In the October of 1171, the King of England at the time, Henry II, led an army into County Tipperary, and many of the chieftains of that county pledged to him, including Donald O'Brien of Thomond, one of the 2 main rulers of the Kingdom of Munster. However, in 1172, those chieftains that had submitted to Henry II withdrew from the obligations, and at a later date, the Earl of Pembroke, also known as Strongbow, marched into battle against those chieftains. A battle was fought in Thurles, known as the Battle of Thurles. However, he was beaten by armies that were led by Conor, the son of the King of Ireland, and Donald More O'Brien of Thomond. England retreated from Ireland. Prince John had invested in a lordship in Ireland, and upon arriving in 1185, he took attention to Tipperary, and there he erected a castle of Ardfinnan that was taken over by Donald More O'Brien soon after it was built. As a result of this failure, Prince John was recalled, and Theobald Walter of the House of Butler gained power in Tipperary. In 1185, England's Prince John, who was later to be known as King John, gave land in southern Tipperary to Philip de Worcester, and land in northern Tipperary to Theobald Walter. This land was the founding wealth of the House of Butler, Theobald was a retinue of Prince John in 1185 and was appointed to the position of Chief Butler of Ireland by Prince John. The title became one that was hereditary in the Walter family, passed down from generation to generation, and they soon adopted the surname of Butler. In 1328, James Butler, a member of one of the ruling families, was made the Earl of Ormond, was granted the Palestine liberty of Tipperary from Edward III. It was when Edward III granted the Earl of Ormond this land that Tipperary was finally known under this name. The only exception to this was the church buildings that occupied the land in Tipperary. They made up their own land called Cross Tipperary, and it was not until 1715, under the County Palestine of Tipperary Act, that they were united as one land.
And how has the population of Tipperary been impacted throughout the years? In particularly, can you tell me how events such as the famine affected the population of the county?
The population of Tipperary, like many other counties in Ireland, has gone through a number of changes throughout the various events taking place. Events such as the famine and the immigration that occurred as a result have had a significant impact on the population in Tipperary alone. In 1841, the population in Tipperary was standing at 438,287 people. This was 4 years before the Great Famine of 1845 hit Ireland and destroyed the potato crops. This population dropped rapidly in the 10 years that occurred between 1841 and 1851. Between those 10 years, the famine wiped out over 1 million Irish people, and the Tipperary population dropped to 332,985 people, a drop of over 100,000 people alone in those 10 years. Munster was one of the worst provinces to be impacted by the famine. Unlike other provinces and counties located near large cities, Tipperary and the majority of the province of Munster did not have access to imported goods and relied more heavily on the production of potato crops. Unlike other counties, Tipperary was an inland county and had no access to goods coming from the coast. They were in a monopolistic position in Munster, meaning that they had sole control of potato crops there. As a result of their high reliance on the crops and their lack of access to goods such as the grains that the larger cities could access, Tipperary suffered significantly along with the province of Munster during the famine, and their population reflects this cruelty. The population of Tipperary unfortunately only continued to drop over the years, and in 1901 the population stood at a very low 160,159 people, a far cry from the 1841 population. The numbers continued to drop to 151,000 people by 1911 and decreased gradually over the years, standing at 133,000 inhabitants by 1996. And by 2002, the population was at 138,709 people, a significant difference from the 1841 population, showing the effect that historical events such as the famine and the immigration it resulted in had in the population of Ireland and Tipperary in particular.
And Maeve, traditionally, what surnames would be considered most common in Tipperary?
Over the years, Tipperary has seen a variety of surnames. However, there are some surnames in the county that have remained popular and are still commonly seen. Surnames such as Ryan, O'Brien, O'Mara, Maher are commonly seen in Tipperary. In addition to these surnames, South Tipperary common surnames include the same names of Ryan, Maher and O'Brien, as well as Dwyer and Hayes. These surnames all have a rich background in Tipperary, and many were the surnames of the leading families there at some period of time. The surname Ryan is one of the most popular surnames in Tipperary, known as O'Malrian in Irish. This Irish version of the name translated to a follower of Rian, though the owner of the name Rian is unknown. The surname was once known as Mull Ryan in our English translation, but before long it was shortened to Ryan, the surname we know it as today in Tipperary. The first record of the name Ryan appeared in the 14th century, during the reign of Gerald, the Earl of Desmond. It was shown in the medieval records of County Tipperary, and they were listed as O'Malrian. The O'Malrians were a powerful family that was situated where the two baronies lay between Limerick and Tipperary. Griffith's valuation records showed over 8,871 Ryans in Ireland at the time, with nearly half of those residing in Tipperary alone. Kennedy was also another surname that was prevalent in Tipperary and is still largely popular there today. The surname Kennedy is O'Conad, and the Irish surname comes from two compound words, of kin, meaning head, and Eid, translating to grim or helmeted, respectively. The surname was later anglicised to O'Kennedy, but the O prefix was dropped from the name during the 17th and 18th century, in the period of the Gaelic and Catholic depression. The surname first appeared in the 11th century and spread from Tipperary to other counties, becoming one of the most widespread names in Ireland. In the 1850s, Griffith's valuation showcased over 1,000 Kennedys located in Tipperary, showing it was most common in the Premier County at the time, without the O. The surname of O'Brien, also known as Bryan, is a surname that has remained popular throughout the years in the Premier County. The surname means descendant of Brian Boru, and it translates to exalted one. It is one of the most common surnames throughout Ireland. First appearing in the 10th century, the O'Briens were first popular in the counties of Limerick, Tipperary, Waterford and Clare, and they continue to be the most prevalent in those counties today. In particular, the version of O'Brien without the O was seen most commonly in Tipperary. The last surname that I will go into detail regarding is that of Maher. Maher is a surname that continues to be common within the county. Originating in Tipperary, it is also known as a variant of Maher, spelled Meagher. The surname is derived from the Old Irish word O'Mahir, with the O translating descendant of, and the Mahir of the name meaning hospitable and kind. Like many of the other surnames in Ireland, Maher was taken from the name of a leader of their clan. The Mahers were part of the Ella kingdom, situated in Egerin, one of the 12 baronies making up the county of Tipperary. Their territory surrounded the town on the Roscrea and the well-known Devil's Bit Mountains.
And Maeve, has there been any significant historical or political events that have taken place in Tipperary and continue to be remembered in the capital, in the county?
The Premier County of Tipperary is well known for its horse breeding and its fields of green. In terms of historical and political events, the County of Tipperary is well known for a few particular events during its long ongoing history. One of those events is the founding of the Gaelic Athletic Association. The Gaelic Athletic Association, abbreviated to GAA, is a well-known association in Ireland and is forever interlinked with Tipperary. This is simply because the GAA was founded in Tipperary. The event is well known in Irish history, as you will know from the previous show we recorded, in which we addressed the history of the massive organisation. Since its founding, Tipperary has been known as the home of hurling, and the Hotel in Thurles, one of the main towns of the county, continues to be open. However, if you are unfamiliar with this show, I will give you a bit of background on the largest sporting organisation of Ireland. The Gaelic Athletic Association was founded on the 1st of November 1884 in Hayes Hotel. On this day, a man named Michael Cusack and a group of spirited, passionate men gathered in a billiard room in that hotel. They gathered here to discuss preserving the Irish sports of hurling and football, and had realised the importance of establishing an organisation that would make the sports such as these more accessible to the people of Ireland. Prior to the GAA being set up, the poorer class in Ireland could not play hurling or football, as they were unable to afford it. It was something only those that could afford it indulged in. Playing was also prohibited on Sunday, a traditional day of rest in Ireland, and the only day the working class would be able to play or watch the sports themselves. The aim those men and Michael Cusack, the official founder, had was to allow all class in Ireland to be able to indulge in the passion of playing the fellow sports. They wanted the sports to remain popular and an important part of the culture in Ireland. So the GAA was born. Throughout the years, Tipperary continues to be known for this event that took place, with Stemple Stadium in Thurles often hosting many matches and drawing large crowds from all over the country. Another historical event remembered in Tipperary is that of the Rock of Cashel. A symbolic place rather than an event itself, the Rock of Cashel is a historical site situated in Cashel, in, you guessed it, County Tipperary. The site has strong connections with Munster and St. Patrick, and according to the local legends, the Rock of Cashel was originally situated in the Devil's Bit, a mountain 32 kilometres away from Cashel that I mentioned earlier in the show regarding the Maher family name. Apparently, the rock moved itself from the Devil's Bit to Cashel when St. Patrick banned Satan from a cave, and is now located there. The Rock of Cashel, as earlier stated in the show, was a traditional seat of power for the province of Munster before the Normans invaded. The historical site is made up of multiple buildings, such as Cormac's Chapel, referring to King Cormac mac Carthaig, and the cathedral. Both buildings were built in the 12th century and remain standing today. Lastly, in addition to the historical events such as the iconic GA and the Rock of Cashel, Tipperary is also known for some political events taking place. The War of Independence is an event well documented in the history of Ireland. The role Tipperary played in the war remains to be one of the historical and political events that Tipperary is remembered for. During the War of Independence, the county played a key role in fighting in the Irish Republican Army. In particular, the 3rd Temporary Brigade was one of the most active units out of 80 involved in the War of Independence. The war was a battle between the Irish Republican armies and the British armies that lasted from 1919 to 1921. The Tipperary Brigade is well remembered in the war, as many say it was this brigade that initiated the first attack of the war in the Solo Head Beg ambush in County Tipperary. This brutal ambush killed 2 of the British Army soldiers, and as a result, 4 Tipperary men from that brigade that led the attack became the most wanted men in Ireland for it. Those men, known to the public as the Big Four, were Sean Tracy, Dan Brenn, Sean Hogan, and Seamus Robinson. The 3rd Brigade gained significant attention because of the actions taken by those Tipperary men. And the event, although occurring many years ago, is still remembered purely for the fact that the Solo Head Beg ambush is what started the 3-year war between England and Ireland.
Thank you, Maeve, for your work on the premier county, Tipperary. Tipperary is a county close to my own heart, and today I have learned stuff that even I didn't know about it, so thank you. There is certainly more that can be investigated further on this topic, and I'm sure all of our listeners out there who are interested will do their own research. But I do think this is a good point to end the show on after everything we've learned today. I'd like to thank Maeve, our guest, for being on today's show, and I'd like to thank her for all of her work that she did. And I'd like to thank our listeners for enjoying the show. This show will be repeated on Radio Corca Bashkin on Sunday.
Did you ever stop and wonder if you could be related to everyone with your last name?
Just think if you're a Lincoln, how you'd be congratulated if Honest Abe were someone you could claim.
To clear up any mystery, just check your family history.
Genealogy's the name of the game. Now some ancestors you'll find you want to hide,
but most of them will fill your heart with pride.
Oh, your family tree, your family tree. Check your genealogy, find who was who and how who came to be. On your family, 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 family tree.